it will output the text and to the console. And so this is using the print function in Python. Another quick detour here. Just recently, Google came out with a music generation program. So in this case, it allows one to create a song, as it were, some music based upon other music that the system knows about. So it, in a sense, mashes up different types of music that it knows about, and it creates new forms of music. And these types of systems will I think, become very popular. Even organizations, companies such as Spotify have commented that there's many types of these examples of music being created by these generative music systems, in this case, Google's Music LM. So the Music LM interface is similar to the ChatGPT, and that you use text as a prompt. And so you enter in a text, the screen is presenting the Music LM interface, and it prompts us, what do you want to create? And it gives us some examples. It says, try something like some instrumental background sounds for a long walk on the beach, or a melodic techno beat. And we would enter in those types of prompts, and then it would generate sound for us in the form of music that it's created, if you will. So these are all types of prompt systems, generative prompt systems, as you will. Another great feature is to summarize a video transcript. And so what I did here was I took the transcript from the video that I mentioned and showed earlier of the interview at the NVIDIA conference of Ilias Tsigar. And I took the transcript and I asked ChatGPT to summarize the transcript into 50 words. And it generally when you give it a prompt such as specifying a number of words, it may not get the number of words exact. It may go over or under. You can ask it to be more specific to get exactly 50 words. However, in this case, I just said 50 words. I could have said around 50 words, but it gave me around 50 words in this particular summary. So it took the entire transcript of the video and it summarized it into approximately 50 words. And it talked about the fireside chat that they were having, and it talked about the development of the GPT system in the summary, the different sources of information for artificial intelligence, large language models. It talked about the potential and limitations of the reasoning capabilities, and that using AI generating its own data for problem solving and learning. So this is part of the summary that ChatGPT gave from the transcript of the video. So generally, there's other types of systems that allow you to copy in the URL of the video, and they generate their own transcripts and also do summaries, chapter headings, and things like that. So when we talk about prompts and prompt engineering, if you will, we talk about these prompts which may include roles, tasks, and formats. So one can simply ask it something very simple to create a story or to create a video summary. But one may also assume a role, such as earlier we saw the CEO of a company as a particular role that it has. So if we look at this a little bit more we can look at popular roles used for ChatGPT. So many students use these things. So you could say, as a student, help me write a resume. Or as a writer and author, edit this story that I've written. As a traveler or tourist, I want to go to this country and please give me an itinerary. I want to go to the Latin America. What country should I visit? Where should I stay? As a programmer developer, as we showed, can you write code for me? Can you create a function? Can you debug a function? As a language learner, can you please translate this from one language to another? Can you help me learn this language? What should I do to learn this language? An entrepreneur or business owner may ask, given my product line, what new products should I offer? So other roles, job seekers, creative hobbyists, healthy enthusiasts, relationship seeker, all of these things are types of roles that you can ask these systems like ChatGPT to assume. So you can say, act as a student or think as a student, or you can just simply tell the system you are a student, or what is your advice for a student? So these are all the types of roles that you can specify as part of a prompt. So beyond roles, you can also give it tasks. And so common tasks are for assistance in writing and answering questions, creating writing prompts, translation, as we've seen, coding help, learning and education, recommendations for travel and such. So these are the types of popular tasks that one can use to instruct the prompt engine to do. So you could also specify output. We've showed that you can create SQL output. The most common output is text in these types of systems like ChatGPT and Bard. You can ask it to provide bullet points, to create tables, to create HTML code. People can create a sample website, a starter website, as it were. They can generate JSON, as well as sort of CSV files and such. So these are the common formats that are used for output for given prompts. So if we look at all of these together, we can take a look at this. It's showing that when you create a prompt, you can optionally add any of these. You can add a role, you can additionally add a task, and as a format. So you can say, I am a marketer, and I want to create a headline for my new product, and I want you to show that in rich text. Or as I am a journalist, and I want you to create a summary of a video, and I want you to also show me a word cloud of the key concepts in that video. So some types of systems will provide things like word clouds. So these are the key elements of prompts, and we can now take a look. Let's see if I will pause here for questions before we go on to the fact that generative AI text can create what we call hallucinations. So we'll jump into that as a next topic, but I will just pause here for questions.
So I had one question here, Robert. You mentioned Hugging Face. Is Hugging Face connected to the internet? Like, is it connected to the web in a sense? Like, does it have latest data, or is it like ChatGPT restricted to a certain timeline?
As far as I know, I am not absolutely certain of my answer, but I understand that Hugging Face is trained on a large language model, and that it is not learning from the web as it exists today. So as far as I know, Bard, as well as ChatGPT and Hugging Face, are not learning from the types of data that's being created today on the internet. ChatGPT explains that they have been trained on data through the year of 2021 and not created in the future.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
So we have one question from Rakesh. How will the response differ if we are asking a prompt as a role and prompt as a task? So like the difference between prompt as a role versus prompt as a task. Like an example he gave is like, as a traveler, build an itinerary or give me a travel itinerary, right? So like build a travel itinerary versus give me a travel itinerary.
I would encourage, Rakesh, thank you for your question. And I would encourage you to try for yourself, because depending on whether you use ChatGPT or Bard or Hugging Face, you certainly will get different answers. And if you ask a given system the same question repeatedly, you also may likely get different answers. So a role is not required, though it can typically help. It's suggested that one provide a role to the system in order to get more specific types of such as part of the input. So these are all parts of the input for the prompt itself. And so as a traveler, if you build an itinerary or give me a travel itinerary, you'll get a similar type of response, I would predict. So you can specify a role, but the system may also understand that you are a type of a traveler if you're asking it for an itinerary. So if you ask the system as an itinerary, it'll probably assume that you're first as a traveler, not say as a CEO of a travel company. It may not think that you're the CEO of Expedia unless you say, hello, I am the CEO of Expedia, and I want a travel itinerary that can be used for 1,000 people who are my most important customers, that sort of thing. So how you specify that role, the ChatGPT system will assume that you're one of these roles, some type of a role from the prompt that you give it. Feel free to expound upon your question if you'd like. And I see other sorts of using Claude, or please go ahead.
Please go ahead, Robin.
So sometimes the accuracy using this person, thank you very much for your question. The accuracy using Anthropic's Claude. So Anthropic is another such system, and they have a generative AI text generation system called Claude. Like Google has Bard, Anthropic, the company, has the product called Claude. And right now you can use it in the context of Slack. So Slack is the interface, as it were, for a Claude as sort of a default interface. They're moving into their own kind of web app as well. And so the question is also, the comment here is the advantages of including a good search on the web, providing URLs if demanded, also analyzing huge docs and URLs provided. So this person has commented about great experiences of the accuracy of Claude. So these systems do provide extraordinary results, and hence their huge popularity. So yes, Rakesh, clearly, if you're a business traveler or you're a leisure traveler, you can result in a different response, so depending on the type of system. So thank you for your clarification there.
Thank you. Thanks, Rakesh. Thanks, Robert. Robert, just a quick time check. We are at 8:40 PST. Okay. We have about 20 minutes. How would you like to structure the remaining time? I know you mentioned you wanted to show some.
Yeah, let's see about doing demos of this sort. If anybody would like to suggest prompts in the chat, we could certainly try that. I will actually, before I go to the demos, I do want to mention two other key points here. And one is around the so-called hallucination or creating false information. And the second is giving feedback. to these types of systems. So generative AI systems like ChatGPT, like Claude of Anthropic, like Google's Bard, as well as Hugging Face's system can what we call hallucinate, or what is referred to as hallucinating. So it's giving false answers or incorrect information or potentially harmful information. And if any such information particularly is harmful in any way to you or to anyone, it's strongly recommended by the developers of these systems and the proponents of these systems and teachers of these systems to provide feedback. So if one, so here I just gave it a quick test. I said to ChatGPT, give me an example. In fact, I gave this to Bard as well. Give an example of generative AI text hallucination in under 20 words. And you can see here that Bard actually provides 3 different draft examples. They call them draft examples. And it said, here's an example of a generative AI text hallucination in under 20 words. It said, the cow says moo, the tree says oak, and the chair says sit down. So these are obviously kind of incoherent, if you will. While the cow may say moo, trees don't talk, neither do chairs. Chairs also don't talk. So this is an example of a hallucination. It's not a particularly harmful hallucination, as it were, but it's a hallucination as such that is perhaps not useful for what you're trying to do. So when you have a particular prompt and it is giving some kinds of incorrect answers, you can use the thumbs up or the thumbs down icons or to give feedback. And when you do this in ChatGPT, it brings up a screen to provide additional feedback, and you can write the feedback as well as indicate in the feedback screen with these 3 checkboxes, this is harmful, or you can check this is true or this is not true, as well as this is not helpful. So these are the types of things that you can do to provide feedback for ChatGPT specifically. So Jamie presented a comment here. Thank you for the comment. Wouldn't it depend on the role? If the role was creative writer, then that wouldn't be a hallucination, just a silly story. Absolutely. So in certain cases, we may think of a hallucination as part of a creative process. And so that can be very useful for us if we're trying to generate creative inputs. In this case, please go ahead.
I do have a quick question. So how do you differentiate between hallucination versus inaccurate results?
That's really up to the person receiving the results. So when you see the results, you may or may not realize if it's true or false. You may have to check. One of the things you can do with prompts is to ask for sources. So in a particular prompt, I can ask it to give sources. I can ask it to give URLs, and we will try that in one of our first prompts here. We'll ask it to give a URL. So we can then try to see if that URL is correct or not, and then indicate with feedback if we happen to know whether it's true or false. Does that answer your question?
Yes. I was thinking more about factually correct, but I think the URL helps. The sources help.
The sources are a good way to find out where the information was drawn, and we can't always rely on, even if the sources that are quoted are accurate. So,
absolutely. Okay.
So let's give a couple of demos. We could try one or more of these types of systems, and then we'll move into a Q&A. So I will stop sharing this particular screen, and I will move to sharing the one second here. Okay, So let's move over to ChatGPT. This was the example of that. And let's create a new chat. And so this is using ChatGPT, and we have the option to use ChatGPT 3.5 or 4. And so I will select 4. This is actually a paid version. So at this point, OpenAI, the company that creates ChatGPT, is charging $20 a month to be able to access their GPT-4 language model. And they also have some other options for using plugins and such. So they also note that you can only do up to 25 messages every 3 hours as such. So let's create a prompt, and just following up on your question with regards to a source or URL. So would you like to suggest a prompt?
Let's see. We have some in the chat. Well, I don't see a prompt. And
yeah.
Robert, do you want to?
Please.
Yeah. Maybe we can. Yeah.
About the creation of now, even if I don't spell this correctly, it may help me. So here it is, just simply creating a story about the Sistine Chapel. As I mentioned, Wikipedia is one of the training sources for most of these systems. And so it could be taking this in part from Wikipedia. If I've seen enough of the response, I can simply tell it to stop generating the response. If I've had enough content, if I want it to do less content, as I said, you can specify that. But I could also make it more specific. I could say, I could now assume a role. So I could say, you are a historian. Please provide a 50-word explanation of the fall of the Roman Empire. So in this case, I'm just giving it a text input, I'm giving it a role, and I'm telling it I want the output to be 50 words. And so here's giving me approximately 50 words, like that. So let us create a prompt. Can you ask it to alter the reading level? Absolutely. So please rewrite the above prompt for a person. We could make it simpler. We could say a person, we could say a student, or we can say a second grade student. Interesting, huh? It has the capability of being able to just assume another level of intellect, and we could go further, and we could write it for different levels and such. So let me scroll here for another couple of examples I wanted to show you. Let us imagine that we want it to summarize a legal contract. So let's say we have a terms of service by an organization. So let's say I have this long terms of service, perhaps, of an organization, and let's see, let's say I want to copy all of this and I want it to summarize it. So I have a huge terms of service, And I may just want it to summarize this. So this is a long sort of terms of service, and I may ask ChatGPT's, maybe I'll create a new chat, and I'll say, act as a person who is opening up my first bank account. Please summarize the following. And typically, when you ask it to summarize, you can give it you can use a colon and specify it. There's other techniques to do this. And so it'll take all of this comment. And I can have also said how many words I wanted for this summary. So it's, if I scroll down a little bit here, I will see the summary. So it's these sorts of things that I can do. So that's giving me a summary. I can also, as I said, make it a shorter summary by asking it. If I'm a developer or a coder, I may want to look at some code. So I can say, wow, this is a lot of code. Can you help explain this to me? So I can copy the code, and I can now say, maybe I would want to generate a new chat. Let's generate a new chat. Act as well, let's just act as a programmer. We can be polite. We can say, please summarize this code in 100 words. And so I pasted in all of the code, and then I will ask it to do this prompt. And typically scrolls to the top, and it begins to explain what this code is doing. So what I did is I copied in code, and I told it to give me approximately 100 words. It looks like it could be going over 100 words here, but it essentially is explaining the code to me, the computer code, the programming code. It's very interesting, huh? And then also, as you notice on the left, it gives a title for this particular prompt. It says code summary, tracing, gives a brief explanation. If we wanted to change that, we could just simply edit the particular chat. Maybe I want to come back to this, and I want to say, this has to do with a new social media program, Blue Sky server function. So I can change that title. So I can go back to that. Oh, I'm sorry there. Okay. We could go to another area, say law. So we could say act as a lawyer, or act as an attorney. Please advise me how to settle a dispute with my neighbor involving loud music. Early in the morning. So we're hoping it assumes that the music is early in the morning rather than the advice. So it can say some general advice. And so it can say, communicate with your neighbor, document the disturbances, review the local noise ordinances, contact local authorities. These are all sorts of things, mediation or community dispute resolution, or perhaps even consult an attorney. So remember, it is crucial to remain calm and respectful throughout the process to maintain a constructive approach. So I like that. That sounds like a good approach, perhaps, to take.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions in the chat here. How do you manage to summarize a much bigger text?
Great question. Yeah. So there are some what we call limitations in terms of the size that the prompts will allow us to input, as it were. So if I have a 50-page book or a 100-page book as such, it may not fit in there. It may not be able to give it a summary. So depending on what version of ChatGPT you're using, for instance, ChatGPT 4 only allows up to approximately what are called tokens, or 4,000 tokens. So just a little segue. A token is sort of a unit of computation, if you will, that's similar to the size of a word, like a 4-letter word. So we actually pay these systems in tokens, or we buy a certain amount of tokens per month. And ChatGPT, I believe, allows us to about 4,000 tokens, which is approximately 3,000 words. ChatGPT 4 apparently allows for up to about 30,000 tokens, which is approximately 25,000 words. It turns out that the prompt and the output combined are those totals. So we can have approximately up to 25,000 words for an input, but it'll give very little output. So we have to balance between the input and output in terms of those numbers. So what I would recommend to do if you have a very large input is simply to break it down. So if you have a whole book that you're trying to summarize, you may summarize chapter by chapter. Does that answer your question? Okay. And is there another question?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't.
Yes,
Does
go
it
ahead,
help to
Sneha.
provide keywords such as poem, or poem start, poem end, to reference the prompt, such as for the below poem, give me a summary of the content?
Is it helpful to use the word poem in that context?
Yeah. Yeah.
A couple of comments about that. So it turns out that we are paying for these particular prompts. And so the longer our prompts are, the more we pay. However, it's really literally pennies or less than pennies per prompt. So it's not even 10 cents per prompt. It's either a portion of a penny or like that per prompt. So it's a very small amount. So that's right now, it's relatively inexpensive. So if we were to take a poem, so let's perhaps we could find a poem. So yeah, I would say the simple answer is no. You don't need to if it's a poem below. These systems typically recognize that when it's poetry, when it's a song, when it's musical lyrics, that sort of thing. So it's not required, say, to say, this is a legal document, or this is a poem, or this is computer code. Typically, the systems will recognize what type of input it is.
And then the second follow-up was, can you also prompt what should be at the last line of a story? For example, write a scary short story, and then end the prompt like some with it was a beautiful winter day. Okay, so
I know we're about coming up on time.
yes.
Let's try this. There may be other syntax. Use 75 words. Let's see if it responds to that. There it is. So yes, the answer is yes. It was relatively simple. I put that in quotes. I could have used also a colon as well. Before we leave, we should also specify something with a source. Let us do one other. Explain why T.S. Eliot was a great poet, and include links to sources. So T.S. Eliot, you may know, is a famous poet, 20th century. And they're giving some key points. Notice I don't think it's giving sources yet here. So, okay. I will say stop generating. Please give links to sources about Mr. Elliott. Let's see if it picks up on T.S. Eliot. So there it is. So there are some links, perhaps. And whether these links work, we should give it a try. The Poetry Foundation.
Okay.
Like that. So yeah, in this case, it gave accurate links.
Yeah, it did. It did. So thank you so much. I know we're up on time, Robert. I did paste your LinkedIn profile in the chat here for everyone to contact you or ask questions further if that's fine for you. But thank you so much. And everyone else who joined today, we really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining. And Robert, we would love to have you again. Thank you so much for this this wonderful presentation and demo.
Thank you all. Thank you to your questions. Thank you, Sudha, as well as Neha. Good day.
Thank you.